When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 26, Failure Redefined, Processing Shame, Self-Blame, and Worth of Being a Woman. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our inspiring and daring guest, Shirin Ariff. Shirin is an inspirational international speaker, an award-winning 5 times international best-selling author, a resiliency coach for women, and a proud single mother of 4 beautiful children. Her life's work emphasizes how individuals can be true to themselves, how people can find their own inner North Star both in their professional and personal lives, and learn to break free from a stuck mindset. Shirin is on a mission to empower and transform women who are victims of any kind of abuse. She is a founding member and the president of Immigrant Women in Business, an organization aimed at helping immigrant women from diverse backgrounds succeed as independent women and entrepreneurs. Shirin's life story of resilience has been translated into a film as part of the Dream Big docuseries by Ethnic Channel Group. She has documented a great deal of her work with her viral videos with over 3 million views and has received multiple awards along the way. Hi, Shirin. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hi, Salima. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Oh my goodness. I can't tell you how I'm so excited about today. I am both pumped and thankful to have you on the show, and I really, truly appreciate your openness and willingness to share today, and also for your support and taking the stance with me to help break barriers of mental stigma.
Thank you so much for inviting me on this journey, the great work that you're doing. It is very important for people to share their stories so that people can know what needs to be changed, because if more people are dealing with something, then there certainly needs to be a change in that area. I would also like to thank all the people who are going to listen to this podcast. Thank you for your generosity of listening. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for saying those words. And yeah, that's what this podcast is about. It's about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it's related to mental health or not. And no matter what a person's story or struggle is, we know that there is impact on one's own mental health, because mental health is part of a person's entire well-being. And so mental health is the theme that gets tucked away. right? When we're telling our stories.
Right.
And so I know your story has been told many times in various means.
Right.
So today, with your permission, when we do get started with the interview, I'm hoping with your permission, we will be able to uncover some aspects that perhaps have remained tucked away for yourself as well.
Absolutely. And I would like to say, in my story that I have shared, there are many, many untold stories of many, many women.
Right. Absolutely. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to use this platform to break those barriers of mental stigma that have been conditioned in our society, that have been conditioned in our cultural norms and our societal norms. And, hopefully with our presence together and with each of the guests that have shown up, we're really encouraging people to dare themselves to share and tell what people typically have reservations for revealing. And so that's why I'm bringing forward a trend that I like to call the mental beauty rethink. So, Shirin, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think mental beauty?
Well, the first thing that comes on my mind is the beauty of being willing to see ourselves with all our flaws and everything in our mind. We know who we really are, and to be able to there's a picture of who I am in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of it is that you know I'm okay with being me.
Yes.
And the beauty of how I associate mental beauty is with the idea that no matter what life throws at you, even people who have mental health issues,
Mm-hmm.
there is beauty in their mind.
Right.
There is a beautiful mind within them that keeps them going, that keeps them going through the struggle. And if you see, a lot of the best artwork, the best poetry that comes out of these minds that have been troubled
Right.
show that beauty that is untouched.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what a beautiful message that comes to mind for you. Thank you very much for painting that picture, so eloquently articulating that.
Right.
So I'm eager to get started with all of the questions. Shall we begin, Shireen?
Yes, please.
Okay, we've got this. Okay, Shireen, for the first question, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. How would it read?
Well, my title would look like the wrongness and unworthiness of being a woman.
The wrongness and unworthiness of being a woman. Okay. Can you say a little bit more about this? Seems to be some sort of a theme. Can you share a little bit more about this theme?
Right. So when I'm talking about this, it's my lived experience. So I would say a lot of times in my life, I've been punished in many different ways
Mm-hmm.
for just being a woman. When I am saying I'm going through abuse,
Mm-hmm.
it is expected of me to go through abuse.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not physical, or even if it's physical, if I'm quiet and if I don't make a noise about it, or if I don't oppose it, then or I don't defend myself, then I'm this good woman.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I question it. Like, forget about anything else. Is it so wrong for me to be a woman? Did I have to suffer only because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
woman?
That expectation to endure pain.
Right,
And
right.
so, as I was mentioning, I know that, I'm aware that publicly your story has been told. And I know that, as we talk about this headline and, suffering from abuse and pain and this wrongness and unworthiness that shows up and is tied into showing up as a woman, I'm wondering if you're feeling ready to share about those aspects of your story that are deeper rooted with some of the other things that have been buried away, that you're able to share with us today.
Yes, of course. And I would like to say one thing,
Mm-hmm.
I was yesterday I was reading a book on NLP,
Mm-hmm.
neuro linguistic programming. And
Yes.
what I discovered was, whatever I share, even in my books and even in my the speeches that I have, when I'm sharing my story, I'm always there's something, some parts are missed out. No one can possibly recollect every single detail of any story. So every time I revisit my life story, there are things that show up, that pop up in my mind that haven't popped up before.
Oh, yeah. It's also part of delayering and unpacking. So, the more we connect to ourselves, the more we connect to our stories and our core story, the more we're able to connect with those details. Right. So that's how the other details show up. We're warmed up, we're ready, we've peeled several layers away. So this is part of encouraging people to share their stories, because the more comfortable you get sharing your story, there's actually it's quite fascinating how much you learn about yourself each time.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there are some parts that you feel uncomfortable with, that there are many things you think about when you write a book or share your
Right.
story, like how uncomfortable would your family be?
Mm-hmm.
What would it be like if people knew this or that?
Right.
You know, so there are different stages in your life when you're ready to have different conversations.
Yes. And so, as much as I encourage people to get comfortably uncomfortable, it's not meant to be so uncomfortable that it's overwhelming. Just enough that we're being challenged, right?
Right,
To take that risk and do something different.
right.
Okay, so let's get started. If you're ready to share some of your story or parts of your story today, I'm all ears.
Thank you. See, I'm just reflecting on how I was, before my separation. It was so difficult for me to share my story or what I was dealing with, even with one person, even with my best friend, and now I'm speaking to people on a stage
Mm-hmm.
and sharing my story. It's been quite a journey, but yes, I was born and raised in India
Mm-hmm.
in a traditional family. I had 13 uncles and aunts living in the same family. I had over 30 cousins. We lived in a huge mansion. I went to an all girls school when I did my undergraduate degree and my postgraduate degrees in an all girls college. And it was considered not a good thing to talk to boys because I was a girl. So
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in a way where I was very aware of the list of do's and don'ts for a girl.
Mm-hmm.
About when I was 21 years old in my last year of university, I was apparently too old to be married. So my mother was worried about me. My cousins were married way before me, and so my mother was worried that I wouldn't get a good match. And I got married at 21 to a very learned um, computer software engineer, only son. My parents had good
Mm-hmm.
intentions, thinking that, he's the only son, he's successful in his career. My daughter is going to be happy. But that was not how things went. He definitely was a very lovely human being, but he was a drug addict. And so, forget about drug addiction. I didn't even know how to deal with a
Mm-hmm.
man because I wasn't allowed to talk to boys all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was expected to marry a man and create a great relationship with him. So that was a huge struggle. As it, a marriage to a man itself was a new
Right.
experience for me. I didn't know anything about drugs. I didn't even know drugs existed in India.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in a very sheltered and protected way. And so, of course, my marriage went downhill and things didn't work out. I was blamed for all the failure. I was blamed for my marriage not working out. It was, nobody questioned his role in making the marriage work because he was a man. So it was expected for me to be the keeper of the marriage. It
Mm-hmm.
was expected for me to do the work in the marriage.
Right. Right. So you're supposed to perform magic to keep it all together, to do wifely duties. You have to be the one to fix the addiction. And what were the repercussions if you didn't?
Yes, so something that no rehab could help, something that he
Mm-hmm.
was not ready to help himself with, give up his addiction. I was supposed to take charge and fix all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the pressure. And because I was failing, so I wasn't a good daughter in law. Because I was failing,
Mhm.
So over a period of time, not only did those words become my inner chatter
Mhm.
in my mind, I started questioning if I'm lovable or not. Because why is it that my ex-husband
Mhm.
cannot live without drugs?
Mhm.
But if he had to choose between me and drugs, he'd choose drugs. So I made it mean, as a young woman, I was like 22 years old when I married him. So as a young woman, I made it mean that I am unlovable. And I grew up, dreaming.
Mhm.
I used to watch Bollywood films, and I was a student of literature. I read,
Right.
Romeo and Juliet and a lot of these love stories and love poems. And my idea of
Mm.
marriage, my idea of love was that I would be the one and only in his life. Like, people die for love.
Right.
Romeo and Juliet died for each other. Like that kind of, I was a die-hard lover.
Right.
And so I had that expectation that
Mhm.
my husband would love me back in the same way. There's
Right.
no one more important in his life than me. So that was when I started questioning myself. And then, of course, my marriage fell apart after 8 years. I had a daughter from my first husband. My family members thought that if I had a daughter, if I had a child, then my marriage would be better. He'd become more responsible. So basically, I was kind of like a guinea pig being experimented with. Like, my in-laws knew that he was an addict, and so they thought if he gets married he'll become responsible. When that didn't happen, then okay, if he becomes a dad he'll be responsible. And
So they
so,
tried to always have some sort of a solution to this big
yes,
problem, but none of those were really
yes,
viable solutions or realistic in any
yes,
way. Okay.
yes. The only good thing in the marriage was that he was very loving, and his words were, he was very soft spoken and gentle. He
Mhm.
was struggling with his addiction, so it was very difficult for me to, like, stop loving, like put brakes and say, okay, I don't love him from today. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
So, well, we were financially struggling. He had lost his job, and we were moving from city to city, living in homes of other relatives and my in-laws and my parents. And then, towards the end, when you don't have money and when you don't have anything in life, nobody wants you. And so and my in-laws were totally sick and tired of his addiction, and all the things that he was doing because of that addiction, like stealing, not going to work, and selling things from the house,
Right.
asking people for money. So it was very, very difficult.
Right.
And I was being made to feel ashamed. So if he went asking relatives for money, I was being made to feel ashamed that, you know it's a shame to ask for money. Like, what are you guys doing? And then nobody would tell him anything. They would put me to shame. So I came back to my parents' house. My in-laws sent me back, and then again, now my mom was feeling uncomfortable. My parents were uncomfortable that, I've come back, and divorce is not something that happened in my family. So, you know, everybody was gossiping about it, and everybody was trying to guess what was wrong, and we were not ready to share that, my husband was a drug addict. So that was itself a shameful thing. There was a lot of stigma attached to that. So then people assumed something was wrong with me. So not only did my in-laws assume something was wrong with me, now my own family members, my extended family members, were already talking that something was wrong with me. And then slowly they got wind of the fact that he was doing drugs. And when they heard that, then why was he doing drugs? Something was wrong with me. I must have been doing something wrong for him to, do drugs.
So
And no,
no
yes,
matter what his behaviors of an addict, whether it was out
yes,
of desperation or
yes,
urge or craving or whatever the
yes.
result, you were put to shame.
Yes, my mom was rushing me into getting married again, because we went through a divorce, and that marriage was over, that chapter had closed. And I brought in a lot of shame to the family as a result of my first marriage. And so her narrative was, now you're divorced and you have a
Hmm.
daughter. So, as there's like the hidden message of, okay, you're not, you're flawed. you know.
Yeah, the unspoken sort of
Yes,
vibe that
yes,
will, yeah, you're damaged, you're not,
yes,
you're
yes,
second, right?
yes. And so now that you're a divorcee, you
Mm-hmm.
can't be very picky about who
Yeah,
you're going
you
to
don't have a
marry.
say. You're not going to be able
Yes,
to have a say the way you want to. You have to
yes,
settle for what's available.
yes, yes. And whatever was available, or I would say whoever was available,
Mm-hmm.
they were interested in marrying me, but they didn't want my daughter, who was
Mm-hmm.
again a girl
Mm-hmm.
child.
Mm-hmm.
And so then my mother was under pressure, and she was insisting that I should give my daughter up for adoption, and like give her away to my in-laws, to my sister-in-law, who was successful, and she was a doctor. So she said, she will have a great life, she will be with her relatives, so you can move on in your life and get married. And I didn't want to go that way. I didn't want to give my daughter up for anything in the world. I didn't have to be married. I wasn't ready for marriage. And in it, well, in India, your parents and your elders decide, and they put pressure on you, and they make choices for you in life, and that's the way things were. And so I was pushed into.
And it seems like this time the marriage is more for like a solution to a problem rather than
Yes,
really something to build a life with,
yes,
right? Like
yes,
build a life from.
yes,
Mm,
absolutely. And it's more of a compromise, like
yeah,
I don't have a choice. Just, if someone is saying they'll marry you, then be grateful and move on.
yeah, right.
So, you know that's what it was. And
Take what you can get.
yes, with that in the background, I ended up getting married to a man who was 12 years older than me, and I came to Canada as his wife.
Hmm.
The only reason why I said yes to him was because he was the only one who said yes to my daughter. He said he was ready to accept my daughter, and
Hmm.
I didn't have to separate from her,
Hmm.
and she would come with me.
Hmm.
Although I was reluctant because Canada is so far away, it's a
Hmm.
different culture. I didn't know anything about Canada other than the fact that I had learned in school about the geographical features of Canada.
Right.
But and as a teacher, I taught that, but I didn't know much about what it was like to live here.
Culturally,
Yes,
the societal norms,
yes,
how people
yes. So
operate, all of the ins and
yes,
outs of
yes.
everyday life.
Yes. And my biggest support was my father. So if there was anyone who was very supportive, he put me back to school again. He made sure I became a teacher and I was working. So he was basically very empowering and very supportive. And so I was afraid that if I came to Canada, I wouldn't have that support here because I have nobody here. So I was not very keen on getting married so far away and coming here. But at that time, my father's business had suffered a setback, and my father was worried that that my mom was not very kind to me. So he was worried that if anything would happen to him, he was getting older, then maybe my daughter and I would not have a great life here. So he
Hmm.
kind of spoke with me and said that you, at least this man is accepting your daughter, like don't worry about him being 12 years older, or being compatible or not, checking all that out. This is your
Hmm.
second marriage, just move on. Like at least
Move
he's
on.
accepting your daughter.
Right.
While I'm alive, I want to see you settled,
Hmm.
go overseas. What's the worst that'll happen? You've already lived through a divorce. If it doesn't work and if you're divorced, at least you'll be in a progressive country where you'll be able to build your life there.
Right.
So move on. And so I took that advice from my father. Like I think he gave me the best advice based on how circumstances were. And then I came to Canada.
Yeah, like the circumstances are very much like these are the facts about how we operate, how we live, right? And this is the best possible solution or best option
Yes.
to move forward.
Yes. And, Salima, what I would say is more, it wasn't the men who were making me feel unworthy. It was the women.
Mm,
It's their gossip. It was their accusations that, oh, why can't you change my brother?
right. Why can't you fix my son? Why can't you tolerate my brother? Why can't you handle my brother? All of the question being questioned.
Yes. So the gossip and criticism came from women more
Mm.
than it came from men.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now fast forward, I've come to Canada. This man is supposed to be madly in love with me. Well, at least he showed that.
Right.
What a charmer he was. It's such a contrast to my first marriage, where my first husband used to be so heavily, high on drugs that, he wouldn't even be in his senses to know where he is. So obviously, our marriage, our relationship was suffering, and we didn't have um, that kind of companionship, those times together where fully be present and enjoy each other. So here I had this man taking me on a honeymoon, and he's full of life, and forget drugs. He doesn't even smoke a cigarette. He doesn't drink tea, no bad habits. And I'm like, okay, he's the perfect man. He's romantic. He sang for me. He
Right.
swept me off my feet.
Mm-hmm.
He showed me the Taj Mahal for my honeymoon, and he confessed his love to me right there, and all of that, all that I had read in books,
Mm-hmm.
all the words in the poetry were all embodied in this man.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a part of me, the skeptical part of me, who used to feel like I'm not unlovable, was questioning me at that time. Can this be true? During my honeymoon phase, I was like totally madly in love with him. I couldn't stay a moment without him. And he came back after my marriage in India. He came back here and he said, okay, I'm going to sponsor you. You have to wait for your sponsorship. We couldn't live without each other.
Yeah, you built a relationship and you were building trust and rapport and connection.
Yes. And throughout my, the process, the immigration process, he was informing me of where things were at, and how he had bought a new house, how he was doing it up, and all of that. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my god, like I don't even have to ask, and
Mm-hmm.
he already is beyond what I could ask for. So I was very happy, and totally taken
Mm-hmm.
off guard when I landed here. And then I was taken to an apartment where there's nothing there. There's just two empty rooms, and there's a mattress on the floor, and a bed frame is propped on the against the wall. And I was surprised when I landed here in Canada, and
Mm-hmm.
none of what he described, the house that he was going to welcome me into, none of that was true.
Okay.
And so that was my first, like my heart thumped at that time, and that was my very
What
first
was
time.
different? So, if he promised a certain kind of home, what sort of home did you end up walking into or stepping into?
Yeah, so I remember when we used to talk on the phone, and he would be, I'm going today to buy our refrigerator. What kind of refrigerator would you like? What kind of stove would you like? Oh, I'm the workers are working on the washroom plan, and I'm buying this television for you. But when I walked in, there was nothing there. There was no television, there was no cable TV, there was no
Mm-hmm.
refrigerator, which is double door and all of that. And here's
Mm-hmm.
the thing, I didn't ask for any of this, because you see, the Canada is very advanced compared to India. So I didn't even know what kind of TV you have here or anything. And
Right.
I didn't have any of that on my mind. I was under stress that I'm living at my parents' house, and my mom is uncomfortable about it, and I'm unwelcome here. So those were the last things on my mind. I wasn't thinking of a television and a refrigerator. I wanted a home. I wanted to belong. I wanted a place where
Right.
people want me and my daughter. So, all that I was looking for was a place to belong, a home that we could call our own. And the home was not a concrete four walls and a roof, but in someone's heart. Because if we made a place in someone's heart, they'll make a place for us in their home. So, after I came here, uh, first of all, there was a prostitute at the door. That was scary because I had never seen a prostitute up so close. So, coming into a new country, and I was scared to even question him. because I didn't know where I was going. And then we climbed up the stairs, came to this.
Well, it must have been pretty shocking for you.
Yes,
Or
it
like
was.
Shirin, it must have been really shocking for you, and what an adjustment. And also, as you were mentioning, you didn't ask for certain all of these things, all these amenities, but he was offering them and asking you to choose and talking about it. So obviously you're going to be blindsided,
Yes,
right? Like it's like you're thinking, did I hear wrong? Like did you start questioning yourself if
yes,
you did I even have this conversation with him? Like am I just
yes,
did I make this up in my mind?
yes. You know what happened when I
Mhm.
came up and looked around the room and there was nothing? Then I told myself, shut up.
Oh.
Don't ask where's the TV, where's the fridge, where's everything that you said. Because what is he going to think that, did I marry him for money?
Okay.
I didn't marry him for a television. So I was this good wife. I shouldn't be asking for things.
So that's where your thoughts went.
Yes. And so I kept quiet and I didn't ask him. And then the next thing he tells me, I gotta go. So that was another thing that made my heart sink. And I was like, okay, what does he mean by he has to go? And he says, I have to go
Right.
because I have to work. Welcome to Canada, baby. This is North America. People work different times, different shifts. You
Right.
have to be on your own. And now the romantic in me, who was anticipating that I haven't seen him for months, I literally said to myself, I'm going to blindfold myself and let him lead me because he's so good. I
Right.
didn't, like, all my fears were gone because of the way he charmed me, because of the way he showed up, because of the way he was nice to my daughter when we were in India. Little did I know that that was a trap
Right.
just to get me here. And then once I was here, of course, I don't have my family here. I have no one here. So I just have him here. So now I'm vulnerable and I'm totally under his control. And I have offered, like, I remember I came to Canada only with $250. That's all I had. US, 250 US dollars, because I was traveling from India to here. And I gave it to him
Mm-hmm.
because, women back home, they didn't handle all the money. They gave it to their men. The men were in charge of the purse strings. I would ask my, even with my first husband, I would ask him for money. And, he would give me what I wanted and I'd buy what I wanted with what he gave me. So I wasn't used to being the boss of the money. So I came and gave him the money and I trusted him and he was in charge, like, you're in charge. So I didn't question him.
Mm-hmm.
And then within a month of me being here, he drove me around Toronto in the daytime. Every evening he would go away, and he made me believe that, evening, all night he's working, and then the next morning he's going to be back. I settled into that idea because he was very nice to me in the mornings when he came home in the beginning. And he was like, he was charming and taking me out and my daughter out for long drives and, eating at restaurants and all of that. And then, coming back home. So I was happy. The romance was back and everything was going smoothly. Then within a month, he moves his office into one of the rooms. And then he starts training me on how to do the files and everything. Then, and slowly, slowly,
Right.
over the years, I take over doing all his office work. And he comes, and my life becomes like this, that I do all his work. He comes home. His home time is work time in the morning with me. So we are doing work together. The romance is fading out. And he blames it on, like, we're getting used to it now. It's like living a real life. And then slowly, slowly, the verbal abuse starts to begin because, uh, you know he loves children and he wants many children, and he says that's a tradition in my family. So that then the blame starts to begin, and he starts to neglect me and my daughter. And then when I start questioning him, he gets angry because he says, my house, my way. If you don't like it, go back. So,
So you
and
really
the
had to tolerate all of
yes,
that and just silence your own
yes, yes.
emotions.
So, and like starving me of the exact same thing that he used to shower me with, built up my expectations on all of that, and then he withdrew, withholding all of that, so that I feel starved and deprived, and I would do anything to be loved. So I'd go down on my knees and beg for love. And literally that's what happened. I started beginning to feel like when my second marriage, when I started experiencing abuse, emotional,
Mm-hmm.
mental abuse, comparing my body parts with his first wife, and calling me ugly. So within 6 months of me coming here, um, I don't know if it was the stress level of, uh, you know, not getting pregnant, that made me experience paralysis on my face. So I was diagnosed with Bell's palsy, and from then on, he started saying that I was ugly.
Right.
But that was a huge setback for me, because when I looked at myself in the mirror, I used to call myself ugly. And growing up, the way I was raised, the idea, like being an Indian woman, the idea of looking beautiful is that I want to look beautiful for my husband. And so I started giving in to his atrocities. If he was flirting with a woman in front of me, I would stay quiet and justify in my head, I'm ugly and he's a man, and it's his physical need, and it's his need. So he's flirting with a woman, and I have to shut up because I'm ugly and I'm undeserving, and
So the
and
more
I'm
you so the more you sacrificed and the more you kept quiet, the more and more intense the experience was from him.
yes.
Okay.
It got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And then he started talking about how his first wife was better, how his first wife was more attractive, how she performed better as a wife, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And what that did for me was I started pushing harder and harder, not realizing that it'll never be enough. I would never be enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and what it did to me was it made me even more ugly.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you how. Because all that loathing, self-loathing that I had within me, that exploded one day. And one day I lashed out at him, in the sense that, when he was swearing at me and saying bad things, then he was only swearing at me.
Mm-hmm.
Then, because I didn't set any boundaries, then he said, let's push this a little bit more. Then he started swearing at my parents and swearing at my mother, like filthy verbal abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I would cry, and I would break down and cry. When he
Mm-hmm.
saw he could get away with that, then he started swearing at my sister, then
Mm-hmm.
he started swearing at my daughter. And when he started swearing at my daughter,
Yeah.
that was when I that was it. That's when I realized, yes, that was my breaking point. And then I started swearing at him, because I felt so cornered and so diminished that I had to roar
Yeah.
to to have my voice heard, because telling him nicely or crying wouldn't work. And that roar was an ugly roar. It wasn't a powerful roar. It was very it was actually, I was frightened. I was very afraid of my life, and I was living in the fear that he's going to have me deported, he's going to have me deported. So then,
So you were roaring out of
yes, I
fear.
was roaring out of fear just to scare him. And
Right.
so every time he
Right.
started swearing at me, we ended up in a shouting match at home. And I started swearing back to set my boundaries.
Right. You were fighting.
I was fighting.
Yeah. When the threat response is activated, the fight, flight, or freeze, you went into fight mode.
Yes.
Okay.
And then when that happened,
Mm-hmm.
he started embarrassing me. So what he did was he called up my cousin. I had a cousin who lives in the States. He called up my cousin, and he started complaining about how bad I was as a wife, and how I was, answering back. I wasn't being obedient, and I was questioning him, and I was being demanding. And here it is. I wasn't being demanding for things. I was being demanding for his time,
Mhm.
because I put my foot down and I said, I don't want you to work wherever you're working.
Mhm.
I want you to be with me in the evenings. You're going to be with me and my kids.
Mhm.
And we're already working together in the daytime, so
Mhm.
I don't want so much money. He used to always say, in the end, all this money is going to be for you and your children. So
Mhm.
I told him, I'm not greedy. I didn't marry you for money. We're happy with what we have. I want some time. I want to be with you. I miss you. And so I, and I felt that because we were not spending quality time together and we were only doing work together, that is why my marriage was suffering this setback. That is why he was angry with me, because there was no bonding time and things like that. But that's not how it was.
That was the next explanation you could come up with.
Yes, always justifying.
Right.
I kept justifying in my head.
Right.
So he called up my cousin and he embarrassed me, and my cousin didn't know. Like, you don't go, we people don't go and talk about their problems to everybody. So
Mhm.
it was kind of awkward for me to face my cousin, and my cousin was trying to make me understand that I should be quiet and not fighting and demanding, and I didn't know what to tell him.
Mhm.
And then another time when I lashed out and I tried to set boundaries in that way,
Mhm.
he called up my dad and he said, take your daughter away. I don't want her. I want to leave her. And then my father was trying to pacify me and say, you got to adjust. This is your second marriage.
Right.
This, you've got a second chance. You got to make it work. Maybe if you have kids with him, he'll be better and there'll be a bonding. Try to make it work. Try to make it work, because well, my father was afraid if I go back to India, my mom wouldn't
Right.
want me, and I didn't want to go back. So he knew that, and so he took advantage of that, and it went on, and it kept escalating until until I found out that he had a kid from his ex-wife in the same year as I did. I gave birth to twins, and he had a kid from that other woman. So
Mhm.
that was shattering, and then when eventually I ended up confronting the lady, and we spoke, and as I look back, it's been a blessing in disguise that that I didn't have to live with this man 24/7.
Yeah, because he was living two lives,
Abusive.
right? He was living
Yes,
two lives that
yes,
you could at least get some
yes,
peace of mind when he was gone. Of course, at the time you didn't
yes,
know if it was peace of mind,
yes,
but looking back in hindsight of how much you endured back then, knowing that you had those moments to yourself,
yes,
is
yes.
do you think that that's what kept you going? Maybe.
Yes, because that was like, time away from him, so it kind of helped me to reset, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing is that, yes, so when he was going away in the evenings and nights, so basically he was going to her.
Mm-hmm.
So legally they're divorced, but he was having a relationship with her.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
he was going to her, and then in the mornings he was coming to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how we were living. She didn't know in the beginning that I existed, and apparently that's what she said. And then I didn't know what was going on, and we were both kind of victims. And then when we had a conversation, and I said, I made that I was the one who took a stand of wanting a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
and his first wife was generous, and she told me, where are you going to go, because you have so many kids, and you know how will you live your life by yourself? So you close your eyes and you stay, and I'll close my eyes and I'll stay. I'll pretend you're not there, you pretend I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
It was very nice of her, but that's like, what kind of life would that be?
Right.
And I'm pretty sure she wasn't happy with whatever happened, but so she is the good wife, the ideal wife that a man like him or a family
Mm-hmm.
like his would want. And so she's celebrated because she has hushed up, and she has remained silent to all the atrocities. Like, that man, he divorced her, then he went and he married me, and then he went back to her and he had kids with her. No matter what he did, she's always been the doormat. She's always been
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate, like, very nice, very, giving wife. Before I went out to a lawyer, I went and approached his family, and this the biggest surprise was when I reached out to his family too.
Mm-hmm.
It's the women
Mm-hmm.
that don't support you. And then, all of these women have been, all of his sisters have been in abusive relationships. Most of their husbands beat them. So this man is a hero. He's not beating me, he's just swearing at me.
Right. So they're saying, so was it more like, just manage it, deal with it, like
Yes,
could be worse. And, this is kind of what they do. And he's a man. So just accept the circumstance.
yes. So, to my surprise,
Right.
my, my, his oldest sister, she says, look at our mom. She was beaten, but she never went and told anybody that her husband beat her.
Mm-hmm.
That is a woman.
Oh my.
So that was their role model, someone who is submissive. And
Mm,
so obviously I am bad. I am the
right.
black sheep because I went and told the whole world that, this man did this to me.
Yeah, you're speaking up now. You're going against the norm.
Yes. And I kept on putting up with it until I reached the turning point when I had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer was the biggest gift in my life. It was my wake up call. I was so unplugged.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was living my entire life out there, outside of my body, serving my in-laws, serving my husband, serving my
Mm-hmm.
children,
Mm-hmm.
that I wasn't present to what is it that I need.
Right.
So it was miserable, it was terrible. And as I look back, I sometimes, I come from a place of self nurturing and self care, and
Mm-hmm.
I tell myself that I really went through a lot. Sometimes I question, like, what was I thinking?
Right.
Why did I put myself through that? And there have been many people who asked me that question. You were an educated girl. You came from a good family.
No, but Shireen, that's the thing, right? Like you can be in a situation in hindsight now, you might know what's better for you, right? Because you're looking from the outside in and you're
Yes,
able to look at the entire circumstance. But when you're in the thick of that mess, you don't have the information and the insights then that you have now.
absolutely. And my mind used to be so confused and foggy
Mm-hmm.
because, it was so bombarded with, abuse, that I couldn't think for myself. I couldn't think clearly. I don't know. It's a miracle how how things have been, and my cancer had spread to my lymph nodes, but I've been cancer without cancer for 7 years,
Wow.
and
That's so
I
awesome.
thank you. It is awesome, and I
Yeah.
feel like this is a second chance I have at life,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't waste a moment. I didn't waste a moment. And that's when my life, and it made me think a lot. Like when I was alone, I thought, okay, the way that I've been, my daughter has been watching me. My daughter has been saying, Mommy, you deserve better. Mommy, you deserve better. Mommy, quit this marriage. Let's do, you, you have to take a stand. This is Canada, because she was growing up and going to school
Mm-hmm.
here. I didn't grow here. So
Right.
it's a different mindset. And so,
Yeah, she
yes,
acclimatized to
yes,
education, Canadian
yes.
education, and her peers, and how like families in how they're
Yes.
raised here. She had more of that. Did you feel like she became your anchor?
Oh my God, she is my biggest anchor. She's my best friend.
Yeah.
And let me tell you the contribution she's made in my life. First of all, she was my only voice of reason because I had nobody here and I
Mm.
was ashamed to talk about my problems with anybody. I was not only ashamed, I was afraid because he had fed my mind with so much fear
Mm-hmm.
that I will be deported. I will
Mm-hmm.
be deported. That I was scared to talk about my situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so my daughter was my only voice of reason. And
Mm-hmm.
she would be like, no, go to a social worker. There's something called a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
Go find out what your rights are. Well, I
Mm.
filed for my divorce, and the divorce was done, and
Mm.
I chose to move away. Like, I didn't fight for, people fight for 50% rights and this and that. I just let go. I chose my peace and my dignity over everything. I just settled with
Mm-hmm.
whatever he offered. It was so important for me to do that because when I had cancer and I didn't know if I'm going to live or die, The only thing that was on my mind were my kids.
My kids, your children.
So, in my book, there's a whole chapter on raising abuse. Like we women sometimes don't realize in who we are being in front of the kids. I can keep telling my kids all I want. Please don't, you know, be a part of this vicious cycle of abuse. But if I'm allowing someone to abuse me and I'm okay with it and I'm being silent and I'm putting up with it, then what are they going to learn?
Right. So you wanted to model that for them and you wanted them to really know
Yes,
the difference. And
yes,
I know that this is
yes,
actually not okay. We're making a change
yes.
and we're going to do it differently now.
Yes, absolutely. And what shifted for me is, remember, I was telling you the time when I got into a shouting match with him
Yes.
and I would scream and fight with him, and I thought that was being powerful to set boundaries. No, what shifted for me is that I don't need to raise my voice to set boundaries. I don't
Right.
need to scream. That shifted for me, and I found my power. And I can be silent and I can set my boundaries.
That's right. And so, Shireen, with everything that you've been through, with all of the different parts of your story that you've shared, going through everything that you've gone through at that time, how did you feel your mental health was affected?
Very badly.
Yeah,
Of course, I was depressed.
of course.
That's why I wouldn't shower and I wouldn't comb my hair and wouldn't want to look pretty. I was very
Mm-hmm.
depressed. I used to have palpitations when, or even get startled when he used to raise his voice and talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, even if he called my name, I would get startled in anticipation
Right.
that he's going to now yell at me.
So you were like walking on eggshells.
Yes, that was my mental state. And then and then to top that, i I was pregnant with twins, and then when I delivered, I had 3 kids from him. When I had those kids, I had postpartum depression,
Mm-hmm.
something that I didn't even know about that term, postpartum depression.
Right.
I had to suck it up.
Right.
And so in those days, now I understand. I used to be so down. I used to sit in the washroom and cry, and I used to turn the lights off
Right.
because I needed that alone time. I cannot cry in front of my kids. I had to be all right in front of them. And that's a good thing too, because because of my kids, I could push myself out of this negative mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really feel is that people need to be educated about mental health and issues and mental illnesses, because you see, a lot of people who show narcissistic traits uh, go undiagnosed, and they create havoc. It's like an elephant running rampant, and trampling over everything that comes in its way.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a wild elephant running rampant.
Yeah. Mental health education is very important, and I think that is like, part of why this podcast is so important for me is bringing the stories
Yes,
forward and people's true sharings. And I'm so grateful to learn so much of your story, and that you've found a way to set yourself free. This is
yes,
like enriching to hear that as much strife that you went through, you found a way, right? That you found a way.
right.
Shireen, what's a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that maybe you want to give a shout out to?
Well, definitely landmark, because right when I got out of all this situation, actually when I was on separation and going through divorce, landmark education was my pillar of strength. Not only did it give me the tools to
Mm-hmm.
process all that trauma and to uh, to deal with things that come my
Mm-hmm.
way, and it also created a community of people,
Mm-hmm.
authentic friendship and connections for me.
Right. Really great supports. Shireen,
Yes.
guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, you survived and thrived, and then you kept going and you're moving forward a little bit more each and every single time. Impeccable. Your story is just so heartfelt.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And all I have to say is there will be moments in your time when you'll think, I can't deal with this. I can't handle this. I have to
Mm-hmm.
give in. I have to surrender. I have to succumb to
Mm-hmm.
this nasty power. Don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give up. Believe in yourself. Don't give up.
Mm-hmm. Don't give up and don't give in and believe in yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Such important words.
Absolutely.
I just want to say again that your story, it was just so riveting. There's so many intricate details that you've shared today. You really continue to dive in and unveil even more today. And that takes courage. It takes resilience to be able to do that. And a great deal of emotional integration to be able to share the way that you have today. And I'm truly in awe of your journey and your sharing. And I feel extremely, extremely blessed to have this opportunity to hear and witness your story. So thank you for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I just hope and pray that anybody listening to this story feels empowered and encouraged, to push past anything that they're dealing with. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have all of your social handles, so we'll put that on the show notes page so people can connect with you and reach out
Cool.
to you if they would like to as well.
Sure.
So, once again, Shirin, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma.
Thank you so much.
To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.